People like to romanticize beginnings. They picture golden light filtering through dusty windows, laughter over takeout boxes, two dreamers scribbling down ideas that will someday change the world. And sure, maybe some of that is true. But the truth of our beginning was simpler than that. It was 2 folding chairs, a shaky drafting table I bought secondhand, and a garage that smelled faintly of oil and paint thinner. That's where Marcus and I built our dream. I still remember the first day he came over, balancing coffee in one hand and a stack of neatly labeled binders in the other. He always had this aura of control about him: pressed shirts, tidy hair, a voice that never wavered. He wasn't flashy, not like me. I was the one pitching our services to anyone who would listen, scribbling sketches on napkins. A leaving passion could make up for what we lacked in experience. Marcus, though he was different. Numbers, organization, caution. He called himself the silent partner from the very beginning. At first, I thought it was just a joke. He'd sit in the background during client meetings, letting me shine, and afterward he'd say, "Ev, you talk, I calculate. That's why it works." And it did work. We were opposites that somehow fit together. Those first months were brutal. We lived on instant noodles and the occasional splurge of greasy pizza when we landed even the tiniest job. We stayed up until 3 in the morning, me hunched over designs, Marcus clicking away at spreadsheets. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I'd hear him mutter numbers to himself like they were a prayer. I used to laugh about it. I used to think it was endearing. Comma. There was a kind of purity in those days. No hierarchy, no titles. Just the 2 of us chasing something bigger than ourselves. I trusted him more than anyone. When he said, "We can't afford to buy new equipment yet," I believed him. When he said, "We should reinvest instead of paying ourselves," I nodded. I was too busy dreaming to worry about details. And Marcus made me feel safe. Like no matter how reckless I was, he'd keep the ground steady under my feet. We signed our first real client in that garage. I can still see the ink drying on the contract. The way Marcus's face softened into the faintest smile, like he'd been holding his breath for months. That night, we celebrated with champagne we couldn't afford, sitting cross-legged on the cold garage floor, toasting to a future we swore would be ours. And in that moment, I believed in him completely. If someone had told me then that Marcus would one day become the person to shatter everything we built, I would have laughed in their face. He was my partner, my anchor, my friend. But beginnings are deceiving. They hide the shadows waiting in the corners. And though I didn't know it then, Marcus's silence wasn't just humility. It was a mask he would one day tear off and use to cut me deeper than anyone ever had. The funny thing about success is how quietly it sneaks up on you. One day you're in a garage, living off caffeine and stubbornness. And the next, you're standing in a sleek downtown office with floor-to-ceiling windows, pretending like you belong there. That's how it felt when our firm started to take off. It started small renovation jobs, storefront redesigns, things nobody else wanted to bother with. I charmed clients, made them feel like we were in this together, like we weren't just contractors but visionaries. Marcus handled the budgets, the contracts, the legal paperwork. He was always calm, always composed, always the one with the neat stack of papers, while I scattered sketches across every surface. Clients liked me because I was passionate. They trusted Marcus because he was steady. Together, we made the perfect pitch. Before long, we were bidding on bigger projects. Offices, municipal buildings, even a few high-end homes. I remember walking into our new office for the first time, a far cry from the garage. The walls were bare, the furniture mismatched, but to me, it looked like proof that we had made it. Marcus, though, didn't even smile. He just adjusted his tie, nodded, and said, "It'll do for now." That was Marcus. Never celebrating too much. Never showing his hand. I didn't think much of it at the time. I told myself he was just cautious, maybe even humble. I thought it balanced me out. Where I was reckless, he was grounded. Where I dreamed too big, he kept me tethered. But even then, small things gnawed at me. Like how he always insisted on handling the accounts alone. How the company credit card was better kept in one place. How whenever I asked about cash flow, he'd say, "Don't worry, I've got it under control." And I believed him. Because why wouldn't I? He'd been there since the beginning, since the garage. He was my partner. Still, there were moments I can't forget now. Like the time we lost out on a bid because our financial records weren't in order. I confronted him, furious, and he just said, "It was a clerical mistake. Won't happen again." All the time a junior architect asked me about delayed reimbursements. And Marcus cut me off before I could answer, pulling the kid aside like it was none of my business. None of my business. But I let it go. Over and over I let it go. Because the projects kept coming. The clients kept signing. And the office kept growing. I told myself that doubt was just paranoia. That Marcus had earned my trust. Looking back, I see it clearly. The silence wasn't humility. It was concealment. He wasn't keeping the ground steady. Beneath me he was digging holes I couldn't see. But at the time, I didn't know that. At the time, I was just proud. Proud of the contracts on the wall. Proud of the staff we hired. Proud of the dream that was no longer just mine, but ours. I thought we were unstoppable. I thought wrong. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Funny how you remember details like that, the ordinary. Wrapping around the extraordinary. Making the moment harder to forget. Tuesday morning, sunlight bouncing off the office windows. The hum of printers and phones. A day like any other. Until I opened the envelope. It was from the IRS. My eyes skimmed the page. Searching for some mistake, some explanation. Instead, I saw words that carved straight into me. Delinquent taxes. Unpaid accounts. Discrepancies in financial reporting. I read it once. Twice. The words swam, but the meaning stayed sharp. This wasn't some clerical error. This was serious. Catastrophic. My chest tightened. My first thought was, Marcus will know how to fix this. Because that's who he was, the steady one, the numbers guy. He handled the books. He always did. I trusted him with it all. I stormed into his office, the letter shaking in my hand. "Marcus, what the hell is this?" He didn't look up right away. He finished writing something, closed his folder, then met my eyes with that maddening calmness. Like he'd been expecting me. "Evelyn," he said evenly, "you weren't supposed to see that yet." The floor dropped out from under me. "What do you mean? I wasn't supposed to see it. It has my name on it. Our company's name." My voice cracked with fury, fear, disbelief. He sighed, like I was being dramatic, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Then, with the same calm tone he used to explain budget cuts or invoice delays, he laid it all out. He'd been siphoning money. Not all at once. Small amounts. Hidden in consulting fees. Miscellaneous transfers. Line items vague. Enough that even I, so focused on clients and design, never questioned them. Over time, those trickles became rivers, flowing into accounts he controlled. I remember clutching the back of the chair in his office. My knuckles white. My knees weak. "Why?" I whispered. And his answer is burned into me forever. "Because I built this too. And one day you'd push me out. You're the face of the company, Ev. Everyone knows you. No one would ever believe it was mine as well." I had to protect myself. Protect himself. From me. It wasn't greed. He said it was survival. But what survival looks like betrayal wearing justification as armor. I wanted to scream. to throw the letter in his face, to demand he fix it. But all I could do was stand there, my trust unraveling thread by thread. This man, my partner, my friend, the one I toasted champagne with on a garage, the all he'd been plotting behind my back for years. And in that moment I realized Marcus wasn't my anchor. He was the weight pulling me under. The letter wasn't just paper. It was the knife sliding between my ribs. And it was only the beginning of the collapse. After that confrontation, Marcus didn't argue. He didn't shout, didn't plead, didn't even try to explain further. He just packed up his briefcase and walked out of his office like it was any other day. And then he was gone. No warning, no goodbye, no fight. Just silence. At first, I told myself he'd come back, that he'd realize how much damage he'd done, and at least try to make it right. But days passed, then weeks. His office chair sat empty. His phone went unanswered. His email bounced back. Marcus had vanished, leaving me to face the storm alone. And what a storm it was. The IRS investigation cracked everything open. Clients started calling, their voices sharp with suspicion. Is my project money safe? Are you going bankrupt? The staff loyal at first grew restless. One by one, they drifted away, too afraid to stay tied to a sinking ship. I'd walk into the office each morning and feel the weight of their eyes on me, whispering behind closed doors. It didn't matter that I had no part in Marcus's theft. My name was on the letterhead. My reputation was on trial. The lawsuits came next. Creditors, clients, even employees, demanding unpaid wages Marcus had siphoned away. My inbox became a battlefield. My desk, a graveyard of summons and notices. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. My dreams once filled with buildings and blueprints became nightmares of numbers bleeding red. And the shame. God, the shame was the worst part. I'd walk into meetings where people used to greet me with smiles and handshakes. And now they looked at me like I was contagious, like I was a fraud. They didn't care that Marcus was the one who handled the finances. To them, we were one entity, one company. His betrayal stained me as much as it destroyed him. There were nights I thought about walking away, selling what was left, changing careers, disappearing into obscurity. It would have been easier, cleaner. But every time I thought about quitting, I remembered the garage, the folding chairs, the pizza boxes stacked like trophies, the champagne on the cold floor, the dreams we whispered when no one else believed in us. I remembered how much of myself I had poured into this company, and I decided if Marcus could burn it down, then I would rebuild it. Not for him, not for us, for me. But before I could rebuild, I had to endure the collapse. I had to stand in the rubble of everything we built together and admit the truth. The man I trusted most had abandoned me, betrayed me, left me with ashes in my hands. The silence of his absence was deafening. Every empty desk in the office, every client who stopped returning calls, every unpaid invoice, all of it screamed one truth. Marcus was gone, and I was alone. But what Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't possibly understand, was that I had been alone before, and I knew how to fight my way back. When Marcus disappeared, it felt like he'd taken more than money. He took trust, stability, the sense that I wasn't alone in this fight. For weeks, I walked into the office and stared at the empty chair across from mine, hating how much space his absence filled. But grief eventually hardens into something else. Anger, determination, a stubborn refusal to let the ruin be the final chapter. The first step was survival. I had to convince clients I wasn't going under, even as debt piled around me like storm debris. I sat across from men in tailored suits and women with sharp eyes and promised them that their projects were safe in my hands. I spoke with a conviction I didn't feel, then went home and cried at my kitchen table. Slowly, some believed me. A few small contracts trickled in. They weren't glamorous, but they paid the bills. I cut expenses to the bone. No more catered meetings, no glossy marketing. I sold furniture, downgraded our office, let go of luxuries I once thought were signs of success. My staff shrank from a bustling team to a skeleton. Crew of 3 loyal souls who refused to abandon me, even when it would have been smarter for them to leave. And together, we clawed our way forward. Every new contract felt like a lifeline. Every invoice paid was another stitch holding the company together. I worked longer hours than ever, fueled by a mix of rage and resolve. Rage at Marcus for betraying me. Resolve to prove he hadn't broken me. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming my name, my identity. I refused to be defined by what Marcus had done. There were setbacks, of course. Clients still whispered. Some doors stayed shut. Lawsuits dragged on, draining time and energy I didn't have. I remember standing in court one day, exhausted, listening to a lawyer recite Marcus's theft as if it were mine. My hands shook, but I stood tall. I kept standing. And that became my mantra. Keep standing. Month by month, the fog began to lift. We delivered projects on time. We impressed clients with quality. Words spread not about the scandal, but about the comeback. People started saying, "She survived it. She didn't quit." That was worth more than any contract. Some nights, when I was alone in the office, I'd glance at Marcus's old chair. The bitterness never fully left me, but alongside it grew something else, pride. Because every step forward was mine. Every victory was earned without him. Marcus thought I'd crumble without his numbers, his steady presence. But what he never understood is that I was never just the face. I was the foundation. And foundations don't break. They endure. By the time I signed our biggest contract since the collapse, I knew I'd done it. I hadn't just rebuilt. I'd built something stronger, forged in fire. And Marcus? He wasn't even a shadow anymore. He was a ghost. For years, I carried Marcus's absence like a scar. Even as I rebuilt, even as clients returned, and the company found its footing again, a piece of me always wondered where he had gone. Was he living well, spending the money he stole? Was he laughing at how he left me in the ashes? That life has a way of bringing things full circle. The first time I heard about him again, it was through the industry grapevine. A colleague mentioned he had tried starting another firm on his own this time. It didn't last. Investors pulled out. Clients backed away. His name had become toxic. A warning whispered behind closed doors. Don't trust him. He'll gut you from the inside. Part of me thought that was enough punishment, to be remembered not as a builder, but as a cautionary tale. But then came the courtroom. I hadn't planned to see him there. I was subpoenaed as part of the ongoing fraud case. When I walked in, my stomach tightened, but not from fear, from something closer to curiosity. After all these years, what would Marcus look like? He was smaller. That was the first thing I noticed. His shoulders hunched. His once crisp suits replaced with something rumpled, ill-fitting. His hair had thinned, his face drawn, the shine of confidence long gone. When the judge read the charges: embezzlement, tax fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, Marcus's voice cracked as he tried to defend himself. Gone was the steady, calculating man who once kept me tethered. In his place was someone desperate, broken, unraveling in front of a room full of strangers. The gavel fell hard that day. Probation, fines, the end of any career he could have salvaged. And as he stood there, pale and defeated, I realized something that startled me. I didn't hate him anymore. I pitied him, because Marcus had destroyed himself. The money he took was gone, wasted. The company he abandoned was stronger than ever without him. And all he had left was regret, heavy and unshakable. I could see it in his eyes when they met mine across the courtroom. That flicker of recognition, of shame. He knew. He knew I had survived, rebuilt, thrived, and he had lost everything. Regret is a funny kind of punishment. It doesn't fade. It lingers. It gnaws at you in the quiet moments, when the world has gone still and you're left alone with your choices. Marcus lives with that now. Every day he wakes up knowing he betrayed the one person who believed in him. And that betrayal cost him everything. As for me, I walked out of that courtroom lighter than I had in years. Not because justice had been served, but because I finally understood. Betrayal doesn't define the betrayed. It defines the betrayer. And Marcus will never escape that definition. He thought he was the silent partner. But silence isn't protection. It's a prison. And regret is the lock on the door.